45 आपका बताया, इसको भी एंट्री नहीं है।
और उसमें कैसे चल रहा है? कभी दिल्ली आना नहीं।
Good afternoon, everyone. Please help yourselves to some tea and snacks. We will be commencing in about 10-15 minutes. I would like to invite Ms. Karishma Mehta, SAS Woman of Mumbai, and Ms. Manisha Jain Branding and Communication Chief of Prabha Ketan Foundation, to join us for the release of the book.
आगे बुला रहा है फोटोग्राफर हाँ आगे आगे खड़े
I
रहेगा
request Shabana ji to please come forward and
ऐसा
launch
बैठेगा
the
तो
book,
चलेगा
A Country Called Childhood, a Memoir.
अरे टंगा आगे गया उसको अकल में लाइट मत लगो हर तरफ उनको आगे गया नहीं मारा दिख ही नहीं रहा लाना ऑडियो लाना किधर गया लगा ना लाना जाना
Before we begin, I'd like to request everyone to please turn your mobile phones either on a switched off mode or please turn it on silent. I'd like to request Mr. Deshpande to please start the conversation with Ms. Naval. Thank you.
Good evening. Pure art. I don't know when does it really happen. I heard that the music doesn't need words and book needs only words. And when you see the title is A Country Called Childhood, when does really vocabulary happen? I think life happens first, then we word it. And as we grow with our experiences and understanding, we analyze our emotions and put them in human perspective. Shabana ji saw me with her and she said, दो abstract लोग साथ में बैठेंगे. Now, I love this because now I'm feeling comfortable. No, it's so important really that when you read something and so close to life and yet art. I just asked her that there are 8 lines written on the very first page. What is it? She said, I wanted to write something about the beginning, and the first thing happened to her was a poem. And then I remember a line said by Bukowski, the poet, that is, one poem, the strength of a poem is equivalent to the entire Hollywood industry. So now whether we go into the technical understanding of what did he mean, but it is the strength of or the expanse of poem which just opens layers beyond your words and beyond your comprehension. And that's where I feel is fascinating when I started reading this book. I told her, seldomly you really feel that you read something and you cry and you laugh and really evokes so quickly, and it's a matter of say half a page, and you are amused, you are engaged, and there is no exaggeration what I'm saying. And that does not mean, normally we say as a simple reading, easy reading. That's not the point. Have you seen life? And that's what fascinates me, that at the age of 4, how could she just see life? I mean, I don't even remember when I was 4. I don't think I was ever 4. Yeah, I remember life from 40 maybe. It took me many years to understand what I've lived and put it across, maybe through plays, and to write engaging book. I'll just start with this first poem, which is like, happens to a first. 8 lines. Would you like to read? Because we really want her to say the first line, which will, that's an important line, we will say that. Yeah? No. What? Memory rushes back at times, pulls me by my finger, eggs me on and says, "Come, let's go." Inside those dark chambers where you stood in the light, rejoicing in a life yet to be unfolded. I just say 2 more lines because she's written the book in 5 sections. Well, the note about the book, she says it could have easily named as Stories from My Childhood and not a memoir. And what she means is her life is full of stories. And stories, I don't nurture them, they nurture me. That's what she said. So now to the prologue, and it's called The Dance of Songs. Over to Shabana ji.
The Dance of Songs. It's getting dark in the city of Amritsar. Shops are shutting down. Street lamps come on, casting dim yellow pools of light. Rickshaws and bicycles hustle to make their way home. A handcart loaded with gunny bags wobbles down the street. Even Dwarka's kite shop is winding up. The old Sardar tailor pulls his rickety shutter down, gets on his bicycle, and pedals away. Shami's voice can be heard. She's urging her buffaloes home. Grubby little boys, the mochis, play outside in the gully, and behind the threshold of the phatak, the big iron gate, 2 little sisters, Bobby and Dolly, go about their lives. The scene seems like it's from hundreds of years ago, but it is actually dated back to the 1956. It's one of my earliest memories in which I am almost 4 years old. It's the street I remember the most, the street on which I lived. A little girl darts out of her house crying, "I want to go to my mama." "Come back," shouts my nanny, from inside the big gate. "No, I want to go to my mama." "Your mama has gone to the cinema. You get in here at once." "I will also go to the cinema," she retorts, and runs down the street. Suddenly, something stirs in the air. There's a snuffled grunt in the sky, and the breeze changes. The sky turns red. Tin sheds begin to flap and rattle, the smell of wind on earth. It's a dust storm. Stray pieces of paper littering the ground outside the bookbinder's shop fly up and float in the air. Bicycles fall in a slow, studied motion along the wall of the cinema hall. The wooden shutter of Gyan Halwai's shop tilts and slips out of its clamp. He stands with his arms outstretched, holding it with all his Malai lassi strength against the wind, his lungi threatening to fly out. A rickshaw puller pedals backwards and sideways. The world seems to slant at the edges. Dust storms the streets. My Sardi's voice cuts through the mayhem. Stop, I say. Get back, girl. It's dark. The girl is not coming back. She runs all the way to the end of the street and suddenly finds herself in the middle of Katra Sher Singh Chowk, in front of Regent Talkies, surrounded by huge cinema posters. The posters begin to tear from the whiplash of the wind. Zrr, 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 zrr. Faces of actors and actresses fold up and slap against the dry whitewash of the decrepit cinema hall. Unable to keep her eyes open from the dust, wind and tears, the little girl hides her face in her sleeve. At her feet swirl particles of dust, torn scraps of paper, bright orange and pink trimmings from the tailor's shop, and gather momentum. She stands still for a while, watching the little merry-go-round around her dotted rubber booties until her eyes fall upon something. Across the street, the plotwala is doing a tandav. He is a skinny man who sells little leaflets with the plot and songs of Hindi films printed on them. A strong gust whisks away the sepia-colored leaflets from his hands and flings them into the wind. They soar in the air, going up and up in circles, dodging the poor man's attempts to retrieve them. Tossed into the wind, the yellowed sheets somersaults, now diving to his feet, now rising as if to sudden applause. He leaps and plunges by the side of the road, slapping his arms around, hurling himself as the musical notes. One leaf slips into two and two into four till the song dance about his gaunt, lanky frame. He dances with the songs, the poor plotwala, trying in vain to hang on to his only means of livelihood as it slips away into the grimy air. No one notices the little girl as she stands in the middle of the chalk, enthralled by the dance of songs. Her large eyes fill with tears, but she forgets to cry. There you are, Marjani. My Sardi steps forward, scoops me up in one sweeping movement, lodges me onto her hip, strides down the street, and puts me back inside the house where I belong. As we enter, my grandmother rises from her chair, pointing a finger at me. No little girls from good homes ever go out to the cinemas on the street.
So it's wonderful. Now, Deepti ji, you have already entered in today's evening. Now we would like to know that how did you, or maybe the story told to you, how did you, what was that night? We always know about Krishna's night of birth. So what was that night? Please read it out to us. Stormy night, it is.
The night I was born. Hi everyone. Lovely to have you all here. Thanks. This is the night I was born. It was during the winter rains that I arrived. I was born on 3 February 1952 at the VJ Queen Victoria Jubilee Hospital located at one end of Company Bagh in Amritsar. It was a very disturbed, stormy night, recalls my mama. The night you were born, it rained incessantly. I was lying in a little corner room of the hospital with you, a tiny bundle next to me on the cot. The room was filled with water. It leaked everywhere. A cold wind blew in from the slit in the window. There was a furnace in the room, but no one was around to light the firewood. The long, sprawling corridors of the old Victorian red brick structure lay empty in the thrashing downpour. Dr. Santram Dhal, the doctor who delivered me, had wound up and left for the day. My Sardi, whom managed the house and would later be my nanny, had dropped off the tiffin and returned home. So had my father, after his evening visit. The ward was dim and deserted. In the wee hours of the morning, while it was still dark, a sadhu Baba came knocking on my door, said Mama. But I was too weak to get up from my bed. If I did, I'd have to wade through the ice-cold, waterlogged room to get to the door. The sadhu kept knocking for a long time, begging, but I could not help him. Finally, he left, cursing. What was the curse, Mama? I would ask whenever she'd tell me this story. I don't remember, Beta, she would say. He cursed me, not you, my doll. The night I was born continues to fascinate me with all its dramatic elements, the freezing cold, the dimly lit corridors, the deserted ward, the deluge, the ominous sadhu, and his curse. Thank you.
God, I don't know. Sometimes they say curse is a blessing. So maybe some kind of, because we have lots of gods and goddesses stories, where eventually the curse is working in your favor. In some other, your avatar on earth, maybe not this janam, the other janam. So I think it has worked for you. With growing, we always, when we grow up, we really don't know, like, what are the feelings which we get? We don't know. We maybe because we know something get hurt, we say we are hurt. It's paining, it's bleeding. But the inner hurt, we really don't know. What is it called? And is it your own hurt, or it hurts? Happens because of we see somebody experiencing it. There's a fantastic, a small incident. She can call it a story. Please read, if you can, page number 4. The perfect child. We will discuss, but I just feel that before you read the book, you must know more about it since we are here. Otherwise, we always discuss, interview, questions, answers. We keep on doing all that. That you can Google it as well. So let's be here because book launch is supposed to be book launch. That's what I understand. I haven't written a book yet.
My first proper childhood memory has to do with a boy with a bowl. One evening, Mama, along with other women, had gone to a house in the neighborhood to distribute milk to needy children. I decided to tag along to do my first bit of social work. I was little then and clung to the pallu of my mother's sari as she went about her mission of mercy. The little boy with the dark complexion was even littler. Just as the ladies finished distributing milk and were about to climb down, he appeared at the bottom of the narrow staircase, a small bowl in his hand, looking up expectantly. Oh no, there's no milk left, bache. It's all finished. The boy just stood there looking up at us, his eyes large and luminous in his dark face, dressed only in a dirty banyan, the rest of his skinny body as naked as the day he was born. Why have you come so late, my child? Mama asked again, feeling sorry for the little one. My mother, he began breathlessly, panting from the effort of climbing the 3 steps to get inside the building. My mother did not have a katuri. She had to borrow it. His eyes shone with pale anticipation. But the milk has just finished, Mama repeated, holding on to my hand. The small dark face grew darker. In that moment, at age 4, I experienced a hollow feeling in my stomach as I stood looking at this tiny human being who seemed not more than 2 years old. This image would remain with me for a long time to come. It was the first time I felt empathy for someone. I remember recognizing this as a new emotion. While feeling sorry for him, I was watching myself, watching the boy and feeling his pain. This perhaps was the first lesson in acting, taking a mental note of an experience and storing it away. In my later years, I would draw upon this emotion and use it in many ways. Sitting at a roadside cafe on 33rd Street in Lexington Avenue, he'd suddenly appear before me, the boy with the bowl. Sometimes I was looking at life from the top of the staircase, and at other times I was the little boy with the small dark face with large luminous eyes, standing at the bottom of the stairs with an empty bowl in my hand. Thank you.
All of us have some childhood memories where we really laugh, we are made fun of, and somebody makes fun of us. So there is this story, page number 10. 6. 6. From the beginning.
Deepti means light from? Acha, from the beginning. Okay. From the beginning, I was taught to call my sister Didi, making her sound like she was much older, though the age difference between us is precisely a year and 10 months. Her real name is Smriti, which in Sanskrit means smile. She had the most beautiful smile on earth, and each time she smiled, her eyes lit up like lamps. I like to think I had a great smile too. The difference was that she was oblivious of it, while I knew exactly the effect I had on people, having practiced a variety of poses in front of the mirror in the hat stand. As a girl, Didi was God's good child. In our early childhood pictures, I see the difference between the two of us clearly. She is the all-smiling, trusting, innocent face of humanity, and me, I have this, guess what I'm up to now, look in my eyes. Actually, I was at a great advantage. Didi, being older, was the one answerable for everything, whereas I was accountable for nothing. She was the one who got reprimanded for every wrong we committed. With that innocent face of yours, you can get away with murder, she'd grumble when she got annoyed with me. Mama would dress us in identical frocks, making sure we looked like sisters. During our early school days, Didi rode a bicycle with me happily perched on the back seat as she trundled all the way to school, from Hall Bazaar to Majita Road and back. But she never really resented that. I knew Didi had a soft heart for me. In my favorite photograph of the two of us, we are on a tiny little tricycle going round and round in the Vera. When I was small, I was a total chamchi of my sister, trying to do exactly as she said and did. Perhaps Perhaps this was why, for much of our childhood, she treated me as if I was completely stupid. "You don't know anything," was her standard remark for me, and it was I, and no one but I, who was responsible for creating this image of myself. Every time she wanted a break from learning her lessons and felt like a little entertainment, she would summon me. "Deepti, chal, chuchi banja. Deepti, come on, now become stupid." And I would instantly transform, become a chuchi, start babbling in Totli Zaban, turning all my R's and D's into L's, twisting the corner of my frock around my little finger, narrating some fictitious story. "Eh wala na, main na utthe gayi si te utthe like roki bale si te main," and all that. I went. Didi would enjoy this act of mine for a few minutes and have a hearty laugh, but once she'd had enough of me, she'd suddenly command, "Acha bas, hun theek ho ja. Okay, enough now, you become alright." And instantly I'd straighten up, become completely normal, at once disconnecting myself from this desperate creature of a minute ago. Both of us would quickly return to our books, me to my impossible math, and Didi to her geography lessons. As a performer, I believe these were my beginnings.
I all enjoying listening. You know, it's always you don't know where to stop, where to begin, where to just keep chatting. But I know one thing. I told her it's very difficult that you eventually figure out which is the right medium for you to express your being. Maybe at some age you do manage, and maybe there was a small, there was this documentary which I saw, and it was about renowned filmmaker Tarkovsky, and his whole point was trying to find a medium to express his being, and he found sound. So when I read her book, I felt, because she is a screenplay writer, she makes films, she's made a film, she's acted. But I just feel maybe after reading the book, I just feel this is it. There's a wonderful poem in Hindi. I'd like to say a couplet of it. बाकी कविता शब्दों से नहीं लिखी जाती, बाकी कविता शब्दों से नहीं लिखी जाती, पूरे अस्तित्व को खींच कर एक वीरान की तरफ कहीं छोड़ दी जाती. So there comes the time when you live and you get the inner calling to express. She's painted. It's a wonderful memory where all of a sudden we know she was a painter. I would love it if she reads Blue Frock. Correct? Fiasco. It's the, yeah? Correct, no? 143. Blue Frock of Diwali. But it's a fiasco, but must. There's that one line which just, all of a sudden I remember this film called Loving Vincent, which is, Van Gogh, and the 100 painters, it's a painting animation, and all of a sudden you feel that happened with that one line, I'd say, when she is. So I think this is her calling, writing.
Hello, hello. Here in this chapter, I've been describing the Shera and how kids, you go and how Diwali was celebrated at home. We had this Mochi Mohalla in the back of the house. The house was adjacent to the mosque, and on the terrace where we slept every night for the first 19 years of my life, it was overlooking the mosque. So there's this, between the mosque and the house is this gully, and the Mochi Mohalla, the cobblers, who were refugees from Rajasthan, they had come and settled here. One Diwali night was particularly eventful. I would later remember it as the blue frock fiasco. I must have been about 7 years old then. In preparation for Diwali that year, Mama had cut out from Woman and Home a beautiful picture of two little white girls wearing identical frocks. The frocks were a rich, deep blue with gathers at the waist. Dainty white lace frills hung off the edges of the collars and sleeves. Mama wanted the exact same blue frock stitched for Didi and me for this Diwali. She had a very fine piece of white muslin lying in the wooden almirah, which she decided to get dyed a brilliant blue. The muslin was pulled out from the cupboard one afternoon and taken to the rangwala, who dyed it the same blue. Mama carried the magazine with her to show Color Singh. I would call him, in my mind, I would call him Color Singh. To show Color Singh what exactly she desired. As blue as this, she told him, nothing less. It's called Prussian blue. Now my mother was a painter, so the color tones will keep coming up in the book. It's called Prussian blue. Yes, he assured her. Then the old Sardar tailor from across the house was called in. I want the exact same pattern, she said, placing the magazine in front of him. The old man got down to work immediately, Diwali being just a day away. The day of Diwali, I was very excited. Every now and then I'd run to the thada to check if the frocks were ready. Day turned to evening, and evening came to be night. But this Diwali night, the frocks did not get stitched on time. Though the darzi stayed up till late working on them, little blue strips scattered all around him. Both Didi and I waited. I remember we didn't light up patakas that year. We simply waited on the thada for the tailor to finish sewing on the hooks and buttons and hemming the sleeves and collars so that we could get to wear our new frocks before the night was over. I walked up to the terrace and leaned over the edge looking down at the Mochi dwellings. How beautiful their homes appeared, lit with oil lamps, the sound of their nightly dholak more rigorous, the singing more intense. The mud houses glowed with freshly coated walls, and the white powder motifs painted on the thresholds and around windows. The scene looked like it was out of a picture book. Yes, despite the lamps and the rangoli and the music, there was something sad about this Diwali night. On our terrace, we had not lit the candles. As the night wore on, the festivity around us began to fade. The firecrackers that had lit up the sky a while ago, creating a fantastic backdrop for the white minarets of the mosque, had dwindled to a handful of flashes here and there. Children around the neighborhood had finished bursting the last of their crackers for the night and were now going back inside their homes. This was the quietest Diwali for us girls. The thunder of explosions and dazzle of lights had died down. Only one yellow bulb still glowed. The old Sardar Darzi, sitting on his wooden stool, working away in his modest establishment, giving the finishing touches to our frocks by hand. His was the last shop still open in the gully. Both Didi and I were quiet. Mama stood with the thada with us, sharing our disappointment. All the iron and wooden shutters of shops on our street had clanged shut, a finale to the Diwali night. We came back inside the house, time now to change into our pajamas and get into bed. This Diwali night was gone forever from our lives, uncelebrated. Suddenly there was a knock on the phatak. Without pausing to think, I ran to open the main gate. I perched on my toes to push up the iron latch so the small gate could be released open. In my heart, I knew whoever was knocking on our door at this hour could only be God sent. Sure enough, there he was, the old Sardar Darzi, standing in the dark, his face frayed and tilted to one side, both his arms stretched out. My eyes lit up at what I saw. Our very own Messiah, his grey beard and white turban glowing in the light of the street lamp, the Saviour himself. In his hands he held two hangers on which hung frocks of the most brilliant blue I'd ever seen. The old tailor's face had a faint smile of regret and benediction at the same time. I looked at the frocks and then at him. Didi came up behind me. There we were, two little girls, misty-eyed, gaping at the old man who stood Jesus-like, blue color dripping from his palms. Mama quickly changed us back from pajamas into our new blue frocks. That Diwali night, we were the last two girls up on a terrace, lighting firecrackers, invoking the gods, illuminating the dark skies. Thank you.
No, sorry. My imaginary world, which means that there is this real world, so we don't know exactly what is real. And it's nothing to do with being spiritual about it, that life is one mithya. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about real, what is real happening in front of you. This is what we want to see. So please.
Yeah,
Take
I
us
think
to your-
every child has an imaginary world. We all here at least must have had an inner world, and we live there, and we thrive there. And it's beautiful.
And so you created one character within you when they
Yeah.
either she speaks or I speak.
No.
My mind is off.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. But it's the battery name. It's called self-censor. Okay. So you had created an imaginary child within you. And what was it like? I mean, when was that first which occurred to you? When did this world start?
I don't exactly remember that, but because I used to live in my inner world so much that I didn't quite at that time understand it as being so different from each other. It wasn't like that. I don't remember at what age. I remember when Mama used to narrate her Burma stories, I would always kind of extend that narration and direct it back towards me, like as if it's my experience and I'm part of Mama's narration. I would plant myself into it. अगर वो कहती थी कि in Mandalay we had this beautiful moat around the Mandalay Palace. Our house was just across the street, and we could see, young boys and girls strumming the instrument and boating in the moat. I was always there in the moat, which is I think normal for everyone, right? And I also would encounter my mother. I would encounter my mother. In one encounter, I frock, and she says, where? Oh, I give her a lily. And she takes it, and then she's carrying the lilies in her hand, and she gives one to me. And then when she looks at me, she says, where did you get those eyes? And I say, from you. And it may sound a bit spooky, but to me it was the most natural thing to imagine that my mama, मेरी imagination में mama is asking me, where did you get those eyes? And I say, from you. And she gets a bit confused, and then she walks away, and I keep looking at her walking.
You know why I asked this? It's beautiful because there is a character called Bay, and she would call it Baby. And how is that story? Because Bay dies, and Bay dies, there is a very mystery to it. That she's an old lady who falls from.
Yeah, Bay was a real person who lived at the end of the street on the right corner, beyond the mosque and the tabela. She was up on I think the second floor. But in my imagination, I had made her, sit up in my house, the fourth terrace of our house at the absolute corner. So,
I would like to know. I want you to first tell what the whole, so that you don't have to read where she died. That you see is whatever that death. And that's Sudhakar thing, that's a little bit. What was the reason?
Bay was, I think she was a prominent character on that street. And she was a very proud, small woman. So when I plant her, and I call her Baby, she's now another character. She's taken from Bay, but she's gone beyond that. And she sits on the edge of this huge house, and she keeps watch over what's going on in the world, the Mochi Mahalla, the buffalo shed, the dukandar niche case, and people, bicycles passing and going, people coming in. So I imagine that she's keeping tab on, everything is okay, right, So in my imagination, Bebe was in my imagination. When the real woman, when Bay died, there was some rumors about how she died, how she fell. She had a grandson who was very brilliant, Sardar boy. He came first in Punjab University, something like that happened, and she went all over the mahalla, boasting about her grandchild. And then when Moni was this boy, when he came back home, they had a fight. He said, "Why are you going around? You're telling Sudhakar ko aap bol rahe ho ki look at my grandson. You have been 4 years in the same class, and my grandson first in Punjab." So grandmother and grandson, they had this fight. That's all we know about. And then in the night, it was drizzling. It was raining. We were sitting on the terrace, and slowly in the wee hours of the morning, windows start opening up. And we heard Raj auntie upstairs, our tenants. She says, Beji, big pains, fallen, accident. And then, details filtered in, but in my mind.
But please, Jack, it feels so nice to hear you.
Yeah, I will. So this imaginary part only I'm going to read. In my mind, Bebe's death happened a little differently. Bebe fell like gossamer, not a sound, just a faint, far echo. A muffled blob of old flesh and bones made a low thud, slowly, lightly, floating down like a white chiffon dupatta that slips off the clothesline. Feather-like she fell in the empty street, wet from a night of rain. Tossed onto the ground, her brittle bones in a sack of old shriveled flesh created a silent splash as the jute doll thudded, bounced lightly, and then lay still forever. Had Bebe fallen from the rooftop and died in pain, or had she met her end peacefully over the edge. Nothing there. Baby must be fast asleep or in a delivery. I knocked on her door. No answer. I banged again on that creaky wooden door when finally, with my pushing it slightly, something inside clicked and the bolt slipped open. Slowly I entered the room and called for her. Baby, I whispered. Baby was lying among her chandeliers, still and without life, wrapped in her pink and orange pulkari, and her eyes were open forever. Who was baby in my mind? I failed to analyze. In many ways, baby is me, the writer, looking back at life, living in her inner world, keeping vigil over memories. Many years later, when I woke up in the middle of the night and walked across the Barsati in the drizzle, I saw her. There, standing at the edge of the rooftop, was a figure of a young woman clad in pale pink pulkari. I stood gazing. Baby, I whispered. Baby slowly turned her radiant face towards me and smiled. The night drizzled on. Thank you.
Yes, I think you should speak more. But the point is, this baby got created. Then, you know, it's we cannot express, as we always say, that children can't express. Just don't tell them anything. Don't tell them about. I remember as a child when my grandmother died, I was not allowed to go to the crematorium because I was too small. Because I wouldn't be able to take pain. And well, I came to know much later what death is all about. And there, when I read this book, she has a very, very important chapter about Sunny's death. And I don't know whether she should read, but at least she should speak about it. And her imagination, and maybe being a filmmaker as well, how she's managed to really juxtapose pain to painlessness. I think you should be able to maybe
Yeah, but
speak about it.
I can't tell about it.
Anyway, it's about, it comes from, I'll tell you, the chapter is called Crack in the
Picture Perfect.
Picture Perfect Frame. So it's about how your life is picture perfect and yet there is a crack.
Yeah, there have been memories, a few of them, of my parents' discord between them. My parents decided to move away from each other at a very late age in their life, almost in their 70s. But I, as a child, had seen, I remember a few instances. So I have talked in the book about that and how it impacted me and how it never really let me feel completely secure in any one relationship, thinking always that everything that seems perfect is going to end. No? So that kind of psychological effect or damage had been done, I guess, since childhood. But in this, then I also speak about my mother. Between me and my younger brother, there were 3 offspring that she gave birth to, and she lost